All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, up there in the Northwest, which is kind of what Knoxville, Tennessee looks like most of the time in the winter, which is dreary, wet, and cold. Sean Highkin of Rose Garden Report. Sean, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Chase. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Did I describe what it's like in Portland today?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been like that for most of the month.
Are you okay with that weather? Like, I know you were a Chicago guy for a while, and we talked about it where you said you could handle the winters. I'm not built for that. But could you ever be a coast guy? Like, could you ever be the tan and do the LA beat if you had the opportunity, Miami or something?
I would rather live somewhere that's too cold than somewhere that's too hot, because you can layer up. It's easier to get yourself warmer than to get yourself cooler. That's kind of the way I realize that's probably an unpopular opinion, but I never minded the winters in Chicago.
No, but were you okay with it right away, or did you have to ease into it? Because that's what I've always heard is, like, from the Minnesota folks, it's like once you're here for a while, your body acclimates to the tundra. Or was it a right away thing for you? Because we're tall, skinny guys. Like, I don't see our frames doing well in that climate.
Well, my first year there was the 2013-14 winter, which was I'm sure this term has been used for other Chicago winters since then, but I remember that one being called the polar vortex at the time. And I survived it, and then supposedly the next year was even cooler. It was about the same to me. I was actually just before Christmas. I was in Denver for a couple of days because the Blazers were playing a game there. I don't normally travel for road games, but I was in Vegas for the G League showcase, and so I decided to pop down there because it was like the day after. And it just so happened that the couple days that I was in Denver were like the two coldest days on record there. And honestly, like, I don't want to say it was nothing, but it was like, this isn't anything I haven't already seen in Chicago.
Interesting. Okay. I like it. Well, you cover the Portland Trailblazers extremely well for the Rose Garden Report. Go subscribe, folks, if you have not already done so. But this team in a weird spot. They're in that play-in territory. Obviously, I think the last time we were talking, they were at the top of the West, if I remember.
That sounds about right. That was like the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. They started out 10-4.
Yeah.
After that first big road trip where they went 4-2 and beat a bunch of good teams, and then
what happened, Sean?
I mean, they came back down to earth a little bit. I think they were kind of there were a few things at play. One is, I mean, just like the Jazz, now I think they're going to end up with a much better record than the Jazz because we're already kind of starting to see the Jazz kind of fall out of even the play-in picture at this point. But, like, they were probably playing a little bit above their heads in that first 3 weeks of the season. But then I also don't think they're as bad as they've been the last few weeks where they lost the 5 games in a row. I have been saying since the beginning of the season that if they end up as a top 6 seed and avoid the play, and that is like a phenomenally successful season for them. I still think that's within the realm of possibility just because the margins are so tight with the West, where like they're not very good right now, but really neither is anybody else outside of the top 3 teams. Like the 3 teams that we know for a fact are good in the West right now are Denver, Memphis, and New Orleans, and everybody else is just kind of like, even as up and down as the Blazers have been, they're like 3 games out of 4th right now, and I think they're 11th. So that's how thin the margins are now. Part of it, I mean, there are a few really close games that they dropped that were like very winnable that, you know, that can kind of swing it the other way. But then I think health also had a lot to do with it, where Chauncey Billups was basically just by necessity playing because, you know, Gary Payton II missed, you know, a lot of the beginning of the season, and he just came back within the last couple of weeks. And then Nasir Little just came back over the weekend. He missed 6 weeks with a hip injury. Justice Winslow has been out for a few weeks with an ankle injury. So you have your 5 starters, and then your entire bench while those guys are out is basically 2 rookies, Shaeden Sharpe and Jabari Walker, 2 second-year guys, Trendon Watford and Keon Johnson, and then Drew Eubanks. And, like, that's your bench unit. And so, by necessity, then you're playing your starters a lot more minutes than they think they want to play guys. And your lineups just kind of get out of whack. And I think ultimately it's going to come back around. Like, I'll tell you this, the people with the team, whether it be, Dame, Chauncey, people in the front office, I've been talking to them over the last few weeks about, as they've kind of had this little slide, this little tailspin. They are entirely unworried about. Like, they are not, like, they do not think that, like, oh, the season's falling apart, we might miss the playoffs. In particular, you listen to Dame talk about it, and, I've covered Dame for long enough. We've observed him long enough. He doesn't really say stuff he doesn't believe. And so when he says, look, we're fine, we have to just kind of stay the course, you kind of believe him because you know that he believes it. So I think, like, they could be in a much better spot right now. Like, a lot of where they are is self-inflicted, the turnover issues, which has kind of gone away a little bit lately, but that's been an issue. So is, like, a lot of their late-game scoring and stuff. But they could be in a lot worse spot than they are right now, and I think ultimately they're going to end up being okay.
If you had to guess, if we brought Dame on right now, I'd be like, why are you okay? Like, why are you optimistic about where things are going? What do you think his first answer would be?
Well, we've asked him that many times over the last
honestly
few weeks,
though, like, if we get the truth serum, what do you think it is?
Well, the thing is, Dame is a pretty honest guy about this kind of stuff. He's not somebody who's just going to go up and give a cliched answer about. I mean, there are some other guys that do that. In my years covering Dame, I've always found him to be pretty unfiltered and pretty authentic, but he's also just by nature, he's a pretty level-headed guy. Like, I think he just feels like, he sees what happens every day at practice. He feels like everybody is still sort of bought in. He's also acknowledged, and this is something a lot of people in the organization have acknowledged, is that it's still kind of a new group, and there's really not a lot of, they still have to figure out, like, how to integrate all these new pieces, and there's going to be some stuff. Like, a lot of the turnovers that they've had, a lot of them are, like, self-inflicted. A lot of them are, like, bad passes, or, like, you throw to somebody and, like, he doesn't rotate over right. A lot of it is, like, you look at it and you're like, you can see what they were trying to do there. It's just not all the way there yet. And I think Dame has been through this enough times that he feels like we're going to get there, and that it's not, time to panic because they had a little bit of a losing skid in January. Now, if they're still around the low end of the play-in and flirting with 11 in March and April, then maybe that's a different conversation. But I think they feel like they're okay right now. You can land wherever you want to land on that right now, but that's the people whose opinion about this stuff actually matters. They are, for the most part, pretty unconcerned about where they are right now.
They have a positive point differential, plus 0.5. It's above Phoenix, above Dallas, above Miami, above Golden State, Memphis, like LA Clippers. Like, you can go up and down the list. They're right there at 13th. And the thing, too, that I wonder, when you look at their lineups and you sort through different things and you watching all these games, Sean, I'm curious, why does the Simons, Josh Hart, Shaeden Sharpe, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic lineup just really, really stink? Why is that one just horrible offensively, and why is the plus minus so bad for that one? That's like their only real atrocious big lineup that they used a lot to this point.
Well, I think there's the two people you kind of look at in that. One of them, just when you're talking about offensively, is Josh Hart, who, he's one of the most important guys on the team in terms of what he brings defensively, the rebounding, all that kind of stuff. But offensively, a lot of times, I mean, somebody sent me a stat a few days ago. I don't know if this is accurate as of this second because a few games have happened since then. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but at one point within the last couple of weeks, he was 13th on the team in usage, but leading the team in turnover percentage. And there's also been kind of an issue lately with him not being willing to take open threes, which he's not a great three-point shooter, but he's like I think career like 35% three-point shooter, which is certainly respectable. It's certainly enough that you can't just leave him open. But a lot of times what he'll do is he'll get the ball, he'll have a wide open look at a three, and instead of just shooting it, he'll, hesitate for a second and then dribble into either a worse shot or a turnover or a shot clock violation or something. So there's that part of it. When you're talking about that specific lineup, there's that part of it. And then the other part of it is, honestly, like, for as exciting as Shaeden Sharpe is and for as much upside as he has and, how, long-term his outlook is still really good, he's still a 19-year-old kid that's learning how to play at the NBA level, and he's going to have his ups and downs. And it's all rookie stuff. It's not anything anybody's worried about. It's just, there are times he doesn't know the plays or when he doesn't know where to be. And, sometimes I think he's gotten better lately about being willing to just take a shot when he gets it and it's open and not hesitate or dribble into a worse shot as much. But that kind of stuff is going to be up and down. So that's really, if you're asking me to pinpoint that lineup, I think that those are kind of the two issues with that lineup.
What do you think is the best NBA skill Shaeden Sharpe is going to have?
I think he has. Well, you throw out the dunking, which he's already the best in the league at. But
is he getting in the dunk contest? Is that confirmed?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. Yeah, it is. I believe 3 of the 4 contestants are confirmed. So it's him, it's Kenyon Martin Jr. from the Rockets, and then it's Mac McClung, who I assume is going to be. I assume he's going to be dunking over his cousin Riff Raff, but I don't know.
Wait, is that his real cousin?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, look it up. But
that's wild.
Yeah, it is. But so I think he has a lot of potential and he's gotten, and again, this is something he's gotten a lot better at. Like his shot is so smooth and is so effortless, and he needs to get. I think one of the things holding him back offensively is a lot of times he'll catch the ball on the perimeter. He needs to just go up with it and not take any dribbles. He needs to become more of a catch and shoot guy. I mean, he has the ability to be a ball handler and be a cutter and be a driver. He has the ability to do all that stuff physically, but that stuff is all I think going to come along. But one thing I think he can just do right now is gets the ball, has an open shot, he should just let it fly. And guys like Dame has told him, other guys on the team have told him, you get the ball and you're open, just go shoot it. Don't worry about your place in the hierarchy or whatever. If you're open, we want you to shoot it.
Is he getting better about it?
He has been, I think, over the last week or so. It's still very much a work in progress, and I think defensively he has a lot of potential too. And we asked Chauncey Billups about it a week or so ago, maybe. Actually, it was just this past weekend. But but what Chauncey said about him defensively is that on the ball he's really good, and he's come a long way there. But it's just off the ball and the help defense and that kind of stuff is something he has to get a lot better at. But that's all just rookie stuff and knowing where to be and trying to learn the schemes and learn the plays. And it's a pretty steep learning curve when you go from not only not played in the NBA before, but he skipped the college level because he played in AAU, and then he was on the team at Kentucky. Didn't play at all at Kentucky his freshman season. So you're basically skipping a level of the development, and you're asking him to know how to defend at an NBA level. And most rookies aren't going to be able, unless they're a savant Davion Mitchell in his rookie season last year with the Kings. There's a couple of guys you can
Jose
point
Alvarado,
to.
maybe.
Sure, yeah. You can point to say this guy was a good defender at the NBA level right away. It's going to take time for that to come along.
Well, what do you think they do over the next month? If you had to guess, how do they reshuffle a little bit, or do you think they just stand pat, just let's get healthy and see where we're at? What do you think they ultimately decide to do?
I think they make a couple of smaller trades. I don't know, I think they would like to make a bigger move if the right one presents itself. I don't know what that might be. I don't think Toronto is actually going to trade OG Anunoby. I think a lot of that is just sort of noise, but that's somebody that I know they were interested in last summer, so if that actually comes available, I would imagine that's something that they would revisit. So, I think short of something like that coming available, which I don't expect it to, I think you're going to see them do a little bit of maybe you move I think the most likely guy to get moved at the deadline out of their main rotation players is probably Josh Hart, just because he's going to be a free agent this summer and they have to decide if they want to re-sign him. And he's also the kind of guy that is going to have value on all 30 teams. And so he's right in the mix of he checks all the boxes of a player whose salary he's making $13 million this year. So it's a salary that you can move and every team is going to have stuff that they could send back, a guy that every team would want, and also a guy that you might not be able to re-sign and keep long term. So I think he's kind of
Josh Hart for John Collins.
I know they talked about John Collins. I think you'd have to throw in some other stuff for Portland to make the money work. But I know they talked about John Collins last summer. I think that might have been an either-or situation with him or Jeremy Grant, but I don't know if I don't know where that stands right now. It's kind of hard to like talk about specific names right now, just because the trade market has just been so slow to develop. Because you talk to not just people within the Blazers front office, but people in other front offices. All the stuff that happened this summer, the DeJounte Murray and Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert trades, just threw the market so out of whack that right now every team thinks that they can get that type of return for every one of their guys. Like, I saw a report, I forget where it was from, but it was somebody credible. I saw a report the other day that Detroit is open to trading Alec Burks, but they want an unprotected first rounder and a good young player. And it's like, okay, Alec Burks is good and like he'd help a lot of teams, but a guy coming off the bench for one of the worst teams in the league is not going to get you a good young player and an unprotected first round pick. So everything that's leaking right now about, or like, Houston still wants
Pirtle 2 first rounds for, and it's like, what are we doing?
Right, exactly. Doing? Like Houston still thinking they'll get a first round pick for Eric Gordon in 2023. Like, that's not, but like right now, since we're 3 weeks out from the deadline, you might as well ask for that much, just in case somebody panics and gets desperate and, decides to give it to you. You might as well make the ask, because the worst thing that can happen is teams laugh you out of the room, and then in a couple weeks you have to lower your price a little bit. Yeah. I think we're going to get to a trade deadline where, both for Portland and for other teams, like, asking prices like 3 days before the deadline are going to come way down from where they are right now, and then it's going to be a lot easier to actually look at who's out there, who's available, who costs what, who's gettable. This is entirely me, and I have to, as somebody who actually covers the team and like talks to people in the organization, I have to do the Brian Windhorst, like, I'm not reporting this, don't aggregate this thing. This is entirely just me throwing a name out there. I have not heard that this is somebody that they're looking at. But if I were them and you're looking at like making kind of more incremental upgrades and swapping out some of your bench guys like a Josh Hart or a Justice Winslow or somebody like for like guys that maybe fit your roster or fit, positionally better. That San Antonio is like in the position where they're going to be trying to sell off a lot of their veterans and, go after Wembanyama, and they're kind of already in that process. Somebody like Doug McDermott is somebody that I would be looking at for Portland, where positionally, like, it's a bigger shooter with size that can come off the bench, and is, in terms of what his asking price will be, I think he would be gettable for what they have to offer these teams. Like, that's the sort of move, and I'm not even saying that's somebody that they're going to go after. I'm just throwing his name out there as an example of, like, that's the caliber of guy, like a solid rotation player who maybe fits better with the other rosters, with the other guys on the roster than some of the rotation players they have right now. I think it's gonna be more something like that than something huge like an OG Anunoby or, whoever else, like the quote-unquote big names are that are going to maybe come available at the deadline. I think if they do something big like that, they're going to at some point, because, like, the ultimate goal, whether it's next year or the year after or whatever the case may be, is to actually try to contend while Dame is still kind of in the tail end of his prime. And in order to do that, eventually they're going to have to make like an all-in move where like you trade multiple first-round picks and rotation players and stuff for like a big, whoever. I don't know, like like Pascal Siakam, whoever like the guy is that comes available that is worth trading that much for. Eventually they're going to do that. I don't think it's going to happen in 3 weeks. I think it would be more likely that something like that would happen in the off season or even next deadline. But I think in the next 3 weeks, they're going to make a couple of moves that I think it's more going to be like incremental, like swapping out bench players for bench players that fit better or have better contract situations, more that type of thing.
Interesting. Well, speaking of upgrading, and you're kind of trying to figure out how this is going to work and if they can even take a big swing, it's the Mavericks, and there's disputing reports from Ban McMahon and Mark Cuban today about if Luka
I saw that.
Yeah, Luka. I'm going to go ahead and stick with Tim McMahon on that one.
Tim's usually pretty good about knowing what's going on in that organization, regardless of whether the owner says on the record that he's lying. Like I tend to agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't do any good to just say that publicly too. If you're a Cuban or anything like, yeah, right. Luka absolutely went back and was pissed off, and it's like I need to upgrade this roster.
Right.
Like that doesn't benefit anybody. That being said, I don't know. Like, I'm still pretty bullish on the Mavs, and I wasn't really panicking when they struggled to start out of the gate. Like, they have so many vets and so many streaky shooters on this roster. We saw this last year in a sense where they're going to get hot at some point. Reggie Bullock was not going to shoot as poorly as he was early on. Like, eventually it's going to all even out. My biggest issue is that, and this will be debated for months and months from Mavs Twitter and beyond, is just that, like, hey, you can't lose Jalen Brunson for nothing. It's one thing to, like, whiff on the Porzingis thing. Like, you took a shot, like, totally. Hey, like, we get it. But, like, Jalen Brunson was a key cog in a Western Conference finalist team that took a lot of pressure off Luka in the playoffs, and you not only lost him, you lost him for nothing. And I think when you lose an asset like that for nothing, I think that was an under talked about portion of this offseason where, like, yeah, Luka can be upset, but they lost their best trade chip for nothing. And they replaced him with Christian Wood, basically. And I mean, Christian Wood's playing a little bit better now, but, like, that's not, like, he can't be your number 2 on a title team. Like, this is just a weird spot. I don't know what his trade value is at this point. I don't know who they can really move outside, like Tim Hardaway Jr., but, like, Luka can be mad, but I don't really know what the Mavs are supposed to do. Like, I don't know what they really can do with this roster. I think they're pretty stuck. What do you think?
They're in kind of a tough spot.
Yeah.
For sure. Not only you forgot to mention not only letting Jalen Brunson go for nothing, but also you're using all of your free agent, like, ability to sign, somebody, mid-level exception, whatever deal they gave him, on JaVale, who doesn't even play because Jason Kidd hates him. It's like, it's just this roster, even going back before that, like, it's been mismanaged so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm with you. I thought the Porzingis trade was fine at the time because I think they thought he was going to get back to what he was in New York before he tore his ACL, and that would be your co-star for Luka. It just didn't work out because he could never stay healthy, and it was just never a great match. Like, that happens. That's fine.
Right.
Whatever. But I understood the thought process at the time, but they have just done such a bad job of building around Luka. And, yeah, I mean, if I were Luka, I would also probably be looking around like, yeah, I don't know. Are you guys really, like what are you guys going to do? But I like you said, they still owe picks to New York from that Porzingis deal. And, like, they don't have, like, and this is actually really funny. I was last week on my own podcast, which is also called The Rose Garden Report, which you can subscribe to, by the way, on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and the Odyssey app.
There you go.
I just because the Blazers just did one of those home back-to-backs with the Mavs, like the baseball series over the weekend, and I had my buddy Kirk Henderson, who runs Mavs Moneyball, the SB Nation site. I had him on, and I asked him, outside of Luka, you have your franchise player in Luka. Who else on the roster do you look at and say, this is somebody that I want to have around Luka and build with long-term? Who are the other guys that you're looking at and saying, whatever the future core of the Mavs is that's contending, who is it? And he said, not one player on the roster. He said, there's not one guy that they have right now that he's looking at and says, whatever version of the Luka Mavs is contending, this guy has to be part of it. And that's just not a great spot to be in when you don't have like a lot of draft picks to be able to trade for your next guy. And I think they all, like, banked on, that it was like them and Miami and Toronto were all banking on, like, hey, Giannis is going to ask out in Milwaukee, and then he didn't, and he signed that extension. Like, I think, the Mavs are always, like, they've been over the years, you go back to, Dwight Howard back when that was, like, somebody that you wanted to go after, 10 years ago or whatever. Or, I think, like, Darren Williams was the other one, again, back when that was somebody that you, like, wanted to clear cap space for. They've been one of those teams. LaMarcus Aldridge was another one a few years ago. They've been one of the teams that says, we're going to clear all our cap space for the next superstar that is, wants to leave his current team, and then they just end up never getting them. And I don't know, like, they put themselves, and this even goes back pre-Luka, like, how many years in a row towards the end of his career after the title team, did Dirk, like, take a way below market contract in order to give the Mavs flexibility to bring more guys in? And how many years in a row did they, like, not really do anything with that?
But what can you do? Like,
I don't know.
What do they tell them? Like, what do you tell Luka in this situation? It's like, hey, here's the cap sheet. Here's our roster. Here's where our picks are. We're, like, we're kind of screwed, man.
They
like
are, and whose fault is that?
Right. Well, kind of, because this front office group was not responsible for the Porzingis trade. They were responsible for what happened with Jalen Brunson.
But the guy that's really, really calling all the shots is still there. That's the thing. Like there are some front offices where the general manager and the president of basketball operations really does have all the autonomy to do what they want to do. Like you just saw, like, you're an Atlanta guy. I know that, like, I'm sure you've been following all this stuff going on with the Hawks right now.
Yeah, having a great time.
Like, there was that story, I think it was Jeff Schultz in The Athletic wrote something a couple days ago that I read, where basically Travis Schlenk was really against doing the DeJounte Murray trade and giving up all the picks for that. And then Tony Ressler, the owner, just came in and, like, over the top and said, no, you have to, like, my understanding is that no matter whether, it was Donnie Nelson for however many years or it's Nico Harrison now, it really is still Cuban that's doing everything. And so even though it is like a new front office, it's still the same guy that's really calling all the shots. And he's somebody that's been heavily involved with those sorts of decisions for years with, I would say, decidedly mixed results.
Yeah. And what's funny too, because Luka is so good. And they're
it might not matter. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Luka is so, like, that's like really the argument, especially with the West being what it is this year. Like, you look at the top of the West, like I said earlier, there are 3 teams that I think we can, like, clearly say are good, with Memphis, Denver, and New Orleans.
Yeah.
None of those teams are juggernauts. Like, there's no Warriors with Kevin Durant that, like, everybody knows that nobody's going to be able to beat. Even though this Mavs roster, honestly, even the Portland roster that I was talking about, like, every team 1 through, like, 11 could talk themselves into, if we just get everybody healthy and get the right, matchups in the playoffs, we could make the conference finals. And the Mavs have, outside of maybe Jokic, they have, like, the best player out of any of those teams kind of in that group. It might just not matter that their roster isn't very good if Luka is just doing what Luka does. Yeah, and
I'd probably say I would take Luka at this point over Jokic. And I'm always going to lean guard over
I don't know if
bigs.
I would. I don't know if I would. Just in the Jokic instance, but that's a whole other debate.
Which could, like, we might get that in the second round. Like, I think if you get Kings, Mavs, round 1, like, I think I'm going to go with Mavs there. And then it's like, at this this Nuggets team can't defend. Like, they still have issues there. And we'll see what they look like in a 7-game series.
That's the thing. Even the top teams, like the Nuggets, have issues defensively. New Orleans,
Memphis
like,
can't score in the half court still.
They still have, like, issues with their offense. New Orleans, like,
Health.
Zion, there's Zion. There's, like, Ingram has been out for, like, there's no, like I said, in years past there was, the Warriors are just, everybody knows the Warriors are the team that everybody has to beat, and they're probably nobody's going to beat them. That's not there this year. Even the Warriors, who, I think a lot of their struggles recently have just been because Steph is out and they've had different guys in and out of the lineup. Steph's back now. They still cannot win on the road. It's bizarre. But, even them, like, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt just because they have the track record of, it's still Steph, Clay, Draymond. They're going to be fine. But they're not unbeatable by any means. Like, they could easily, if they lost in the first round, I'd be a little bit surprised, but I wouldn't be, like, completely shocked.
Yeah. The Mavs just feel like the LeBron first time around Cavs. Like, that's just what it feels like.
Yeah.
And guess what? That team got to the finals. And part of it was because the East was pretty open at that time.
But also there was that Game 7 with the Cavs and Pistons which Chauncey Billups still will not talk about, by the way.
Really?
Like, he still was like, we should have won that series. We were the better team. But, like, that was one where it's like, they won that series because LeBron was so good that, like, he wasn't going to let them not win this series. I do think there is a chance that Luka is just that good that, they get to the conference finals again, even with this roster. But you could say that about so many other teams, too. So
I picked
really
them to
hard
make the NBA finals before the season, where I'm like, the thing that people overlook a little bit with this is just that, like, okay, do you think Luka is going to be the best player in the West this year? Okay, well, then guess what? That's a strong possibility of him making the NBA finals, because it's not a young team around him. They're sneaky older. Yeah. It's a bunch of high variant shooting. Like, there's an easy path to Luka being the best player on the floor, and then all their shooters are hot at the same time for 2 straight rounds. Like, it's doable.
I completely whiffed on my preseason finals pick. And this was partly because I was seduced.
Well, it's not over yet. You haven't whiffed yet.
Well, I feel pretty comfortable saying I whiffed on this, but
who was it?
The first preseason game the Blazers played in Seattle was against the Clippers, and that was the first game that Kawhi played since tearing the ACL, and he looked incredible. He looked like old Kawhi in that preseason game, and I saw it up close. I saw it in person, and I was like, if Kawhi is back, the Clippers are gonna run through the West, and
yeah,
I'm not feeling great about that one right now.
It's not over yet, though.
I'm pretty out on the Clippers. I'm pretty out on them because I just don't I don't trust, well, either of their guys, but Kawhi especially.
Mike Conley to the rescue doesn't move the needle for you.
I have absolutely zero belief that Kawhi is going to be able to stay healthy for an extended period of time.
And then you're like, if you're the Clippers, what do you even do? Like, you've gone all in. Like, they're another one where it's like,
what can you do? Like, I listened to Zach Lowe and Bill Simmons talking about this the other day on it was one of the two podcasts that they did, where Bill was saying, like, you should just try to give up on, this core and trade Paul George. You could probably get a lot for him, or, maybe you trade Kawhi, but, like, what are you getting for Kawhi at this point? Because who's going to give up a lot of stuff when you have no idea if he's going to be able to stay healthy for more than, like, a couple weeks at a time? I don't know. Like, that, I understand them trying to go all in the way that they did, and I get it, especially when you're a franchise like the Clippers that's never gotten free agents before, and, like, you have, a top 5 player in the league at the time that wants to go there. I get it, but it hasn't worked, and I really have no belief that it's going to.
I'll see him in person. I'll be back in Atlanta next weekend. I'm going to Hawks Clippers, so
nice.
Hopefully Kawhi plays in that one. I don't know.
Hopefully, we'll see.
It'd be nice to see Kawhi.
You can't count on it.
No. We danced around them a little bit. I think the Warriors do something major at the deadline. My hunch is, I don't know if it's Wiseman. I don't know if it's Draymond, if it's Clay. My gut, maybe it's Jordan Poole. I don't see how they don't, because I understand they're right around 500 and the West is wide open, as we talked about. I don't know if Joe Lacob's going to be able to continue on with this, what he wants to do of the Spurs model of transitioning from the Duncans or the Robinsons to the Duncans to the Kawhis, and just will always be contending. We'll find this seamless transition. I don't know. My gut tells me that they're going to do something major. Does your gut tell you that they will make the biggest swing of anybody this deadline?
What do we mean by major? What are we defining?
Trading one of those big 3 or 4 pieces. I think one of those 3 or 4 are gone.
Clay, Draymond, Poole.
Clay, Draymond, Poole, or Wiseman.
Well, one of those is not like the others.
Well, I just mean like giving up, just like stopping this charade that James Wiseman is going to be a part of this long-term future.
I think that I could see, but I don't know what his value is, because I think we're a few years removed from him having like the mystique of like he's the number 2 pick by the organization that's light years ahead, and everybody thinks he's like a future star, and he looked really good his first like couple weeks of his rookie year. Like, I don't know how much value he has, so I think I don't think they're like against, like, if they do something, I think it might be like trading Wiseman, and then, if they want to trade one of the kids, Moody or Kuminga, I could see, them packaging those guys to do. I don't know who that would be, but somebody that's more of a win now guy. I would be shocked if Draymond or Clay or Poole was traded. Like, I don't see that happening.
It's going to be somebody. I think they're obviously Steph being hurt for a lot of the years messed things up a little bit. But
I think that's what they think too. That they feel like, look, Steph was hurt. We're not worried. Like they also like had a very up and down regular season last year. What were they, like a 3 seed last year? Like they weren't like the greatest regular season team, but then like they got healthy at the right time and they ran through the West, and they feel like they could do that again. I don't think anything is going to happen as far as like breaking up the quote unquote core, but I mean, I think they'd like to trade Wiseman for more of a win-now piece. I just don't know what his value really is at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Raptors, you call around and see who of those guys, because we would all love to see any of the core Raptors pieces outside of Barnes, who's untouchable.
I don't think OG or Siakam are going to get traded at the deadline. I think they will trade either or both of Van Vliet and Trent. I think they're not going to trade Siakam or Anunoby, because I think they're still like, they're in kind of this weird spot where like, and I think this might actually just like come back to hurt them at some point, but Masai is kind of in the Daryl Morey, Danny Ainge zone of like, he's not going to do a trade unless he wins the trade, quote unquote.
Interesting.
And so you're not going to get OG or Pascal unless you're giving up, like I was talking about earlier, like the Rudy Gobert, the Donovan Mitchell, like that type of return, because Masai has to uphold his reputation of like, I always win the trade. I always get the most value for my guys. And I just don't know how many teams are like. I heard that they're asking for 3 first-round picks right now for OG Anunoby, which you're gonna get 3 first-round. I mean, OG's really good, but he'd help a lot of teams. You're gonna get 3 first-round picks for a guy that's never made an All-Star team. Okay, all right.
Would you do Caruso for Wiseman?
I don't know what that does for the Bulls if they're still trying to stay in the playoff mix. I don't know what that does. I mean, I think I probably would do that if I was the Warriors. I don't know if I'd do that if I was the Bulls.
Yeah. I don't know. I am extremely interested to see what happens with them over the next month or so. Last big topic for you, Sean. We've talked about this a little bit, but the team that you trust the most, based on everything you've watched at this point in the NBA season, who in the West do you actually trust the most? That you, not even that you think is the most likely to win the title, but who do you feel most certain about? And you can't answer the Blazers because that's cheating. You watch
I am absolutely not going to answer the Blazers. By the way, even if I could answer them, I don't think they're the team that I trust the most in the Western Conference. Just a spoiler alert, that's not the team I'm going to say.
There you go. Who is it? Who is the team that you feel like you trust the most? You know exactly who this team is at this point.
Is it a cop-out to say nobody?
Yes. You got to go somebody. You got to pick somebody.
I guess Memphis.
Okay. Why?
I don't feel great about it. I just feel like they don't have the defined weaknesses like the other, like, I don't feel great about it.
Is it weird that I feel way better about New Orleans than I do Memphis?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, because I don't think any team has really separated themselves, so that's not weird at all. The issue with New Orleans is, is Zion going to be healthy? Like, is BI going to be healthy? Like, but they're really good too. Who would you take in a 7-game series if they're both healthy? If everybody's healthy, probably New Orleans.
Right?
But that's also like if everybody's healthy, and we don't know if everybody's going to be healthy.
But I don't even know if that's a common. I don't know if that's a common take. I think a lot of people would probably lean Memphis in NBA media, and I'm not that guy. Memphis, I feel bad because they're fun. Desmond Bane's a great story. Jaw's super fun. Jaren Jackson adding the post moves.
Finally, it seems like he's just finally really since he got healthy, he seems like he's finally turning into the guy that they thought he was going to be when they drafted him. Like, it's finally happening for him.
Which is awesome.
It is. It's great. I love it.
But I'm not betting on their health. Like, if I could sell any contender stock just based on health alone, it's Ja, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson all being healthy enough for a title run. Like, I don't ever see that happening. I think it's too much volatility there.
I don't know about ever, but I don't know. This, like I was saying, the West is just so, like, that's why I asked you if it was a cop-out to say nobody, because there's not a team that I look at and say this team is definitely going to be it. Would surprise you because like they've never done it before. But if you told me that the Sacramento Kings won 2 playoff series and got to the Western Conference Finals, would you be like, like you'd be surprised by it, but would you be like, wow, how did this possibly happen?
Yes. The team's not been in the playoffs in so long, and this is that's a lot for year one with Mike Brown. I would be pretty surprised. And look, I'm a big Kevon Huerter, as John Collins.
I like the Kings a lot too, but but it's not. That's not even about really believing in the Kings as much. I mean,
that's the Western Conference Finals.
As much as like I don't believe in any other team so strongly that I definitely don't believe in them. And you could say that about like any like.
Do you know who I do believe in? Do you know who my answer would be for this?
Who?
I think it's the Suns.
Wow, I do not agree with that at all.
The Suns, let me make my case.
Okay.
I think the reason I have the Suns is like, we know now, like when they're hurt, like, okay, this is who they are. They're a borderline play-in team. When they have Cam Johnson at the 4, and what they looked like at the beginning of this season, when they had their main 5 and their normal bench guys, Cam Payne and company, and if Jay Crowder was playing basketball
but that's not going to happen is the problem.
That's not going to happen. But Torrey Craig at that 4 spot, like, their starting 5 is going to be really good if they're all healthy together. Like, I know exactly who the Suns are when healthy. Like, that is the thing. Is like the Suns are not any different than who they've been in the last 2 years. They've just been hurt. And Cam Johnson looked really good before he went down. Like, that healthy group with Booker, Paul, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, and DeAndre Ayton. Like, I know exactly what I'm getting there. I know exactly who that team is.
But I ask you again, just like with New Orleans, how much do you actually believe that those guys are all going to be healthy?
Yeah, I think that ship sailed.
The Chris Paul decline, people have been saying is going to come, and it didn't come the year before his first year in Phoenix. It didn't come last year. It's kind of starting to come now. Like, he's kind of finally starting to look 36 or however old that he is. Like, is he going to hold up? Even when he's healthy, even like when he was younger, he always would kind of wear down in the playoffs. And there's still like the Monty Williams, DeAndre Ayton vibes are still like I would say that the Suns are more likely to miss the play-in than they are to win the West.
That would be a wild offseason if they missed the play-in with this group.
They might have to.
Gracious.
I mean,
Portland's calling about that one. Like, that's a dream scenario for Portland. Devin Booker missing the playoffs, Mikal Bridges missing the playoffs.
They talked about Ayton last spring when
do you want Ayton?
I think they would take the swing. What I know about Joe Cronin is he likes to take high upside swings, and I think he would feel like, that's enough of a high upside thing with the talent that they could absorb it. I think that's something like that. Like I said, it's something I think they looked at last spring, and I think it's something that they would look at if it came available again.
Interesting.
But I think you'd obviously Mikal Bridges is the guy that most teams would want to get. But it's like, if you're not going to trade Devin Booker, you have to kind of keep Mikal Bridges because he's the most sure thing guy to kind of keep around him. That's like sort of on his same age, curve and
Cam Johnson too.
Yeah. That's another.
Cam's good, man. I like.
That's a guy I would be trying to get if I was another team, because then I'd be like, hey, you still got to pay him. Are you sure you want to pay him? Like, that's how I would be. That's how I would approach it if I was.
I'm surprised Crowder for John Collins hasn't happened yet. Like, that was just one that I thought was obvious, and I would do, like, as a Hawks guy, like, at this point, like, yeah, just bring in Crowder for, like, the shooting and the offense in Atlanta is really falling off a cliff this year.
I don't like the Jay Crowder situation at all. I don't think it makes either of them look good. Like, if I were the Suns, if I were like Suns management, I would go to Jay Crowder and say, look, we will work on finding you a trade. I understand, why you're unhappy, whatever. But in the meantime, you're healthy and you're under contract, and we would like for you to play and help our team. I don't think it's a good look.
Seems like a nice ask.
I don't think it's a good look when a player, like, if he was injured, then whatever, but I don't like it. I didn't like it and I don't like it from the team side or the player side. I didn't like it when the Rockets just like had John Wall and just didn't play him because they wanted to. I thought it was weird what the Thunder did with Al Horford that one year that they had him. I don't like it when healthy players who are capable of playing, whether it's the team's decision or the player's decision, just don't play.
And then it's like, how do you do it? Because you can't legislate rotations.
Like, no, you can't, I don't like it. And honestly, like, if you're another team, like, we now have this, data point of Jay Crowder not being happy with his role, so he just doesn't show up. Are you going to give up a lot of stuff for that? I don't know if I would.
Do you think they text back and forth in all caps to match Jay? Do you think it's a requirement that to negotiate with Jay Crowder, you have to type in all caps just like him?
Maybe that's where the impasse is. Maybe that's where the disconnect is.
I couldn't do that. Can you imagine texting with someone who only types in caps? Like, you just get caps lock from all text from that particular person.
That's better than if you were texting with Cam Newton, where he has all those weird, like, character fonts,
the scribbles
and stuff with his
the symbols and all that. Yeah. Sean Highkin, what can the good folks check out from you over at Rose Garden Report this week?
Just a lot of coverage of the Blazers. I today put up the newest episode of the podcast, which features Bill Oram, who is now the Oregonian's sports columnist, but covered the Lakers for a long time for various outlets. And so that was kind of a fun, wide-ranging conversation with him. That just went up today. Been covering, I just had a piece the other day of Nasir Little returning from his hip injury. So that's, that just went out the other day. Got some stuff coming up, but just go to rosegardenreport.com. Subscribe. You can do a free or a paid subscription. I would encourage you to do the paid subscription because there's a lot of kind of exclusive stuff there that you're not really getting, I think, from anyone else that's covering the team. So I do my best to make it worth their money for those of you who do decide to subscribe. And then the podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere that you get that.
Yeah, you're on YouTube now. Go subscribe.
I am. That's a recent thing.
Yeah, we're all on YouTube. Everything they want to watch us, Sean, instead of just listening to us now. They want to watch us.
That's what the algorithm says. So
yeah. So there you go. Sean Highkin, always a pleasure. Thank you, and stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, good to talk to you, man.